Defending Israel with David Harris on JBS is made possible in part by a generous gift in memory of Eric and Mira J. Spector, the Paul and Lynn Late Family Foundation, To Life, to Love, Barbara and Bob Goodkind, the Patricia Worthen Ullman Foundation,
Hello JBS viewers, I'm David Harris, and this is Defending Israel. On May 21st in Washington, D.C., two young people, Sarah and Yaron, were murdered. They were murdered in front of the Capitol Jewish Museum in downtown Washington and attending an American Jewish Committee event inside. Since then, I'm sure all of you, like my family and me, have been experiencing enormous grief and sorrow. Shock that this could happen in downtown Washington, D.C. to these two beautiful young people who were scheduled to go the next week to Israel in order to become formally engaged on the way to marriage and a beautiful life to be created together. We're told that in our world there are 6 degrees of separation. I think actually in the Jewish world it's more like 1 or 2 degrees of separation. I did not know either Yaron or Sarah myself, but I was at the American Jewish Committee for 32 years as the CEO, and during that time we established the Access Young Leadership Program, of which Sarah was an active member, and we established our Diplomatic Outreach Program, of which this event in Washington, D.C. was an extension of that to young diplomats, bringing together young Jewish leaders and young diplomats from around the world. So in that respect, I felt very close. And it was just a few months ago I was in Kansas City speaking at the synagogue to which Sarah's family belongs and apparently where she was raised. So again, it just shrinks the world. Sorrow and grief are what we've all experienced, but I want to go beyond sorrow and grief. I want to go to anger, outrage. I don't want us, any of us, to begin to see, heaven forbid, these events as somehow becoming normalized, as tragic, yes, but an inevitable part of our lives. And I fear that over the years now, we've begun to allow this, if you will, normalization to take place, where we have this short outburst of emotion. We promise ourselves in the world that nothing will ever be the same again, and yet slowly, things go back to a kind of normal or new normal, whatever you wish to call it. But step back and look at what we've experienced in recent years. We've experienced these 2 murders. We experienced the Tree of Life synagogue where 11 Jewish worshipers were murdered simply for the act of being in a synagogue on Shabbat. We experienced the deadly assault on the Chabad synagogue in Poway, California. We experienced the murders in the Jersey City kosher shop, the murder at the rabbi's home in Rockland County, New York, the murder of a pro-Israel demonstrator, Paul Kessler, in Los Angeles after October the 7th. And then we've witnessed other kinds of shocks, outrages. How about those who came onto the subway car in New York and asked Zionists to identify themselves and leave the train for their own safety? Those sitting in restaurants who were assaulted by mobs seeking to identify and menace Jews. How about the Jewish students at Cooper Union in downtown New York who were barricaded in the library because an anti-Israel mob was out looking for Jews? the high school teacher in a public school in Queens who was also barricaded in her office because her students had seen a picture of her at a pro-Israel rally after October the 7th and wanted to punish her. Not to mention what's been going on at too many universities and too many other street protests. We cannot allow any of this to become normalized. This is not America. This is not the America that we know and have loved. This is not the America in which we have lived since 1654. And yes, there have been difficult moments, but nothing quite like we've witnessed in recent months and years. So we have to ask ourselves, what more should we be doing besides grief and sorrow and thoughts and prayers? So I want to ask that question here on Defending Israel. And I want to thank JBS, as always, for giving me the chance to share these thoughts with you, because I don't know where else in the media viewers have this opportunity for this kind of a conversation at some length and without being interrupted by nasty hosts who want to somehow get you if you have a pro-Jewish or pro-Israel message, which is too often the case. I want to ask why, in the year 2000, for example, when the Democratic Party needed to form a presidential ticket to run against the Bush-Cheney ticket and had Al Gore as the leader of that ticket, they felt very comfortable going to a Shomer Shabbat, modern Orthodox Jew named Joe Lieberman, a Zionist from head to toe, and felt that Joe Lieberman could help propel this ticket to victory. And sure enough, in the popular vote, it did. In fact, Al Gore and Joe Lieberman would have been in office had it not been for one vote, the 5-4 split decision in the Supreme Court. What happened between the year 2000 and the year 2024 when the Democratic ticket led by Kamala Harris, also in need of a push, and knowing that it needed to win several of the key battleground states, including Pennsylvania, opted to skip Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania, in some respects quite similar to Joe Lieberman in profile, and go instead with another choice who was not even from one of the 7 battleground states. What happened in those 24 years that explains how one major political party went from embracing a modern Orthodox, proud Jewish and Zionist political leader to shunning another one 24 years later? What explains how my youngest son, who went to an Ivy League college and entered in 2004 and assured my wife and me almost every day for 4 years, Dad, there are no issues on this campus at all when it comes to Jews, when it comes to Israel, when it comes to Zionism. Look elsewhere, because there are issues elsewhere, but not here on this campus. And then fast forward 20 years later, when a colleague of mine from ISCAP sends his son to the very same college, also proudly Jewish, proudly pro-Israel, and practically has to wear body armor in order to get through his first year and now his second year at that Ivy League school. We need to dig deeper. We need to understand what's happened structurally, systemically in our country, which had been so good to the Jewish people for so long. In fact, I need to ask, I, who went to school in the 50s and 60s, never encountered any issues as a Jew. Not in high school, not in summer camp, not in sports, not in college, not in graduate school, not in life. The biggest issue, as I look back, was in my senior year of college, there were a few schools I was told at the time. I remember Princeton, Dartmouth, Williams, and Colgate being mentioned, that didn't look quite so keenly on Jews as other schools did, and maybe not to apply there, although some Jews obviously did and some Jews went. I look at my grown children who, beginning in 1997, went to 8 different colleges and graduate schools. And none of my children faced any significant issues as Jews, either in choosing a college, experiencing the college or graduate school, or thereafter. And yet today, a new generation of Jews is facing a whole set of issues, and that's why this discussion becomes so important. Because we've got to go beyond scratching the surface with thoughts and prayers and grief and sorrow and sadness, though all of them obviously are warranted. We need to understand what else is going on here and what more we need to do. Not just to be angry, though we have every reason to be angry, but to constructively channel the anger into action. Action that is post-October 7th action. And regular viewers of JBS and Defending Israel will know this has been one of my pet themes. There was an October 6th playbook. There must be an October 8th playbook. And that's why, in looking around the Jewish world, on the one hand, I see lots and lots of engaged, committed, good people. But so many organizations, old organizations, new organizations, and still more being created. Too little collaboration and cooperation. Too little shared understanding of what's going on. Too much competition, either individual or institutional, going on. We're still too scattered. And I also see that while our adversaries are playing, let's call it three-dimensional chess and bridge, we're playing Candyland and Go Fish way too often. If we want to fight anti-Semitism in the year 2025, we've got to become a lot smarter and a lot more sophisticated, a lot more technically savvy as well. And I, for one, again, I respect those who want to put up billboards on roadways and entrances to tunnels. I respect those who want to spend several $1 million for a 30-second ad on popular television shows. But I don't really think that that's where we should be putting our precious resources if we want to be serious. I think instead there are several pathways that have emerged which must take priority. The first is the pathway that AIPAC has charted, and that is we need to ensure that the United States Congress, on both sides of the aisle, continues that bipartisan support for the U.S.-Israel relationship, which has been the heart of our country's links from 1948 forward. That's so much of the key to the story. And AIPAC has made clear that it's going to support those in both political parties, be they incumbents or challengers, who stand for that principle. And they're going to oppose those like Jamal Bowman and Cori Bush, who have strongly opposed the U.S.-Israel relationship. Those of us who believe it's in the core national interest of the United States, and not just because we're Jews, but because these two countries are linked umbilically by shared interests, shared geopolitical aspirations, as well as shared values. I also believe that we need to step up our support for those organizations who are trying to dig deeper beneath the surface. That's why I've mentioned to the JBS audience before the work of ISGAP, the Institute for the Study of Global Anti-Semitism and Policy. One of the things that's happened in the last 20 years is about money. It's about foreign funding. It's about foreign funding in particular from a place like Qatar, a country of fewer than 350,000 citizens, some 7,000 miles away from the United States. Why is Qatar the principal foreign funder of American higher education today? I have asked again and again, reflecting the important research of ISGAP. which has revealed not just the funding, but the link between Qatar and the Muslim Brotherhood. And the Muslim Brotherhood, please do your homework if you're unfamiliar with the group, is not the Islamic version of B'nai B'rith. The Muslim Brotherhood seeks to establish Sharia law wherever it can in the Middle East and throughout the world, including this country. Why are we allowing this? And ISCAP is asking the US government, why are you ignoring your own laws, which require American universities who receive more than $250,000 at a pop from a foreign source to reveal the funding to the US government? It needs to be enforced. President Trump has recently signed an executive order to enforce existing law. I'm glad it's done. It should have been done years ago. Much damage has occurred over the years that it was neglected. We need to understand much more the impact of DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, which had its noble goals of diversity, who's opposed to diversity, inclusion, who's opposed to inclusion. Equity is a bit more challenging because it's not quite the same as equality. But in reality, in too many universities, as we've seen, DEI has penetrated the system, every nook and cranny, and has created a binary world in which we, Jews, we American Jews, we Friends of Israel, we Zionists, and we, they, Israelis, are on the wrong end of the stick. We need to understand this better. We need to understand the impact of demography, changing demography. There are huge, vast new communities in the United States which are entering, which are naturalizing, which are organizing. It's absolutely their right. But do we know them? Are we engaging with them? Are we able to find common ground with them? Or are we finding that too often they've succumbed to the intersectional crowd and end up opposing us, even as we, the Jewish community, so often were supportive of their entry into the United States, of the kind of immigration which allowed so many to come to this country? I can keep going down a longer list, including the fact that I believe we need to be much more demanding of both political parties. Too often, too many American Jews have become kind of slavishly following one political party or the other, almost blindly, while despising the other political party, irrespective of what it says or does. American Jews should be active in both political parties, absolutely, but not robotically. Because today, in the Republican Party, you have a decisively, impressively pro-Israel wing, a wing that's deeply concerned about anti-Semitism, that's engaging in serious outreach to Jews, and they should be welcomed and valued. On the other hand, you have the Tucker Carlsons, the Candace Owens, the Nick Fuentes, I can go down a longer list, from within the Republican Party who are trying to pull the party in a different direction. Whether you're a Republican or a Democrat is not my business. My business is to believe that as the pendulum swings back and forth in this country, and it has and it will, between the two major parties, that we can at least feel comfortable that when it comes to Jewish issues, including the U.S.-Israel alliance and the fight against anti-Semitism, we can rely on the core leaders of both political parties. And in the Democratic Party today, I was recently about to enter a supermarket here in New York, and someone with a clipboard approached me and said, "Would you sign my petition? I want to get on the ballot." And I said, "What party are you, sir?" And he said, "I'm a Democrat." And I said to him, "Okay, which Democratic Party? And he looked at me puzzled and he said, I don't understand your question. And I said, are you the party of Richie Torres? Are you the party of John Fetterman? Or are you the party of Bernie Sanders, Ilhan Omar, and AOC? And his response to me was, I like them all. And I said to him, with great respect, sir, that's not the answer that I want to hear. I won't sign your petition. There's a battle inside the Democratic Party for its soul. There's a battle within the Republican Party. Jews need to be active within both parties, and Jews need to be outspoken when necessary, but never blind to the realities that are going on inside those parties. We need to be much more nimble in our intergroup alliances. Instead of clinging to old alliances where we found after October the 7th that what we thought were our cherished partners were at best missing in action, and at worst on the other side, after the most brutal day facing the Jewish people since the Holocaust. Yes, of course we want to spend some time trying to convince them otherwise and bringing them back if we can. But there are lots of other allies we should be looking for and seeking as we build from the Jewish community to a broader coalition that stands with Israel, that stands with the free world, that stands with democratic values. And I fear that we're still a bit paralyzed by old alliances and a sense of we need to get them back, rather than saying we're in a war, we need new alliances where we can find them. We need to go look for them. They're out there. We've seen evidence of them. Let's go engage them. And finally, and perhaps most importantly of all, in fact, yes, most importantly of all, and something I've been saying now for years before October the 7th and certainly after October the 7th, the first way we fight anti-Semitism is with Semitism. The second strategy I've just outlined for you. The old strategy I think we leave behind. We file it in the cabinet. But the first strategy is Semitism. I said a few moments ago that I and my children never paid a price for being Jewish in America. But you and I both know that children and grandchildren today and tomorrow may face challenges that we did not face. Being Jewish may not be as cost-free, and therefore the decisions they make about their identity and the way they pursue their lives matters consequentially. Because if they're going to assume the risks that come with being a Jew in America in the 21st century, then they need to better understand and be better equipped to understand the why of being Jewish. Now, for many, including I'm sure many JBS viewers, you don't need a lesson from David Harris in the why of being Jewish. But I can tell you, as someone who spends a lot of time in the broader Jewish world, that there are an awful lot of Jews at this stage of the game who want to identify, but really don't have the grounding, the level of self-confidence. They still want to be almost apologetically Jewish. Yes, I'm Jewish, but you know, I don't really like the current Israeli government. Yes, I really believe in a two-state solution. Yes, I believe in the humanity even of our enemies. It all sounds fine. But the fact of the matter is that when pressed on Israel, on Zionism, even on Judaism, their identity is too often skin deep. I've met with a number of groups of young people. I've told all my friends, after October 7th, I can't say no to invitations when I can possibly do them. Whether it's 5 people or 50 or 500, it doesn't matter. If they care, I'd like to be there if I can be of help. And I've met high school groups and college groups, some wonderful, bright, intelligent, impressive people. But when it comes to their Jewish identity, when it comes to understanding Zionism, Israel's history, Israel's place in the Middle East, they know so little. Who's going to teach them? I believe our synagogues need to affirm their Zionism, their pride in Israel, and with it, both from the Bima and in the after-school programs, in the adult education programs, introduce much more content, real content alongside the social justice agenda, alongside the other worthy causes. But again, if our young people are going to find the courage to stand up in high school, in college, on the quad, in the classroom, in the dormitory, in the workplace, wherever, they have to have the confidence. And the confidence comes from the knowledge. We have an extraordinary heritage. We have an extraordinary legacy. We have an extraordinary tradition. We don't have to apologize for any of it. We were, after all, the people, thousands of years ago, that effectively introduced the notion of human equality into our world by declaring that there is one God, and everyone on this earth is created in the image of that God. That's completely revolutionary. We are the people that introduced the Ten Commandments, the very notion of commandments, the very notion of law, the very notion of ethical behavior, the very notion of compassion and kindness are connected to the Jewish people since time immemorial. Our prophets were speaking about peace when few, if any, others were speaking about peace. Nation shall not lift up their sword against nation, nor shall they learn war anymore, preached Isaiah thousands of years ago. Our people are connected to a land. It's a land to which we have been umbilically linked for thousands of years. It's not usurped land, it's not occupied land, it's not stolen land. It's land that formed the founding of the Jewish people. It's land that's mentioned hundreds upon hundreds of times in the Hebrew Bible, but it's also in the Christian Bible, and even in the Quran. The Quran, the holy text of Islam, the Bani Israel, the children of Israel, are referred to by name more than 40 different times. We wanted to divide the land in 1947 after the Holocaust, when the United Nations was wondering what to do about this disputed piece of land called Palestine. The Jews reluctantly said yes, though they wished for more land. The Arab world said no. And that pattern of yes to territorial compromise, yes to a two-state solution, repeated itself again and again and again, only to be met with no's. Israel has created a remarkable nation. No, it's not a perfect nation, and no one should pretend or defend it as if it were, or as if any nation on earth, even the best among them, is a perfect, error-free nation. But it's a nation that has remarkably opened its doors to Jews from around the world, created a thriving Arab minority, which serves on the Supreme Court, serves in the Knesset, serves in every hospital, is represented in every university, is perhaps freer than any Arab community anywhere else in the region. We have a lot to be proud of. A nation that has advanced the frontiers of human knowledge, that has now won any number of Nobel Prizes, that has introduced drip into irrigation into food-hungry countries throughout the third world, that has turned an arid country into a water-rich country and has that technology to share. I can keep going on and on and on, but my point is this: unless this is being taught in the home, in the synagogue, in the school, too many of our young people are just superficially engaged. We need to give them, if you will, a skin transplant. We need to toughen their skin, stiffen their spine, but with real facts, with real history, with real truth, and with real pride. And then I believe we may or may not ever get rid of all the anti-Semites. After all, they've been around a very long time, thousands of years. They don't easily listen to reason or rationality or logic. But we ourselves will be stronger. We ourselves will stand up as our Israeli brothers and sisters have stood up to their foes. And we will show the world that the best days of the Jewish people, whatever the challenges may be, lie ahead of us, not behind us. This is David Harris, defending Israel, and looking forward to seeing you again next week.